Hello, welcome to today's partner education event, Unlocking Insights with Microsurveys, how brief surveys drive big impact. We are so excited to share more with you about the value of microsurveys and how they can be leveraged by your institution. So here we go, let's get started. Just a few housekeeping notes. This webinar is being recorded and we'll send you the recording as well as some additional resources in a follow-up email after the event. On the screen, you'll see some tips today to help ensure a smooth virtual experience. We have several panelists today to share their experiences with microsurveys, so you might want to adjust your video layout to speaker view. We'd also love to know where everyone is joining from, so please feel free to share your name and institution in the chat. I know we have folks from across the country here today, so it would be great to hear where you're calling in from. I also know some of you may be enjoying lunch or multitasking off camera, but if you're comfortable, we would love to see your faces. It makes it so much more engaging for us and for you. Throughout the session, you can also always drop questions into the chat and we'll be able to take them through the chat. My colleague Christine is on the line to be able to support any questions you may have. And we'll also open up for a live Q&A at the end of today's session where you're welcome to come off mute, turn on your camera, whatever you feel comfortable with, and join the conversation. So I'll be your host for today. My name is Jen Caius. I am your customer education manager here at Mentor Collective. I create education opportunities for you, our partners, that empower you to build strong mentorship initiatives that drive the most impact. In my previous roles here at MC, I've worked on both the product and services teams, so I have a 360 view really of our systems and our processes, which is one of the topics or the topic for today's conversation, microsurveys. So we also have some absolutely fantastic guests today who have seen success with microsurveys at their own partner institutions. I'm joined today by Avis London, Alyssa Zink, and Deanna Rush, who are three incredible partner success managers here at Mentor Collective. And I'll turn it over to them and they'll drive the conversation here in just a sec. So today's agenda, what are we going to chat about? So this event today provides education on Mentor Collective's microsurvey feature, which is a tool that allows you to quickly gather insights, improve engagement, and connect students to your institution. So in today's event, you will learn how microsurveys can promote a culture of mentorship. I'll talk more about those popped out wheels at the bottom right of my screen here in just a sec. We'll also go over microsurvey basics, just the basics. What are they? How to use them? How to export and share microsurvey data super quickly right from your partner dashboard. And our partner success managers will also share stories of examples from our partners of ways that microsurveys have led to a significant institutional impact. So let's start first with how microsurveys lead to a culture of mentorship. Those wheels on my screen are probably quite familiar to you if you've attended some of our education events over the last few months. This is the culture of mentorship wheel. There are 6 elements in this wheel that promote an institution-wide culture of mentorship. And 2 of those elements are especially relevant for our conversation today on microsurveys. And those are taking a participant-centered approach and a data-informed approach to your mentorship initiative. So deploying microsurveys supports a participant-centered and data-driven approach to mentorship because it gathers real-time, actionable insights directly from participants about their preferences, needs, and experiences. This enables you to work with your program team to create personalized supports that align with participants' unique identities, maybe their aspirations, their circumstances, which ensures that mentorship is inclusive, relevant, and impactful. Mentorship also, or microsurveys also highlight areas where participants may feel like they need additional support or accommodations, fostering a mentoring experience that is accessible and meaningful really for everyone. Microsurveys allow you to tap into student behavior and give your students a nudge in the right direction. This saves you time, right? Allowing you to quickly identify what participants need and directing them to those resources at scale. So whether you have 10 participants in your program or 1,000 participants in your program or 10,000 participants, something like a microsurvey would allow you to quickly figure out what's going on and then to be able to use that to drive strategy, whether it's a nudge or adding resources to your platform or whatever you think is best. Microsurveys also support impactful storytelling. We know that is so important, right? So that is by elevating feedback that demonstrates the program's success, or feedback for opportunities for improvement, right? The insights that are gathered empower you to make informed decisions, share that data with stakeholders, share stories across your institution, spreading that culture of mentorship, and refining strategies to enhance program effectiveness. By prioritizing participant voices and leveraging data, microsurveys, they truly help build mentorship programs that are both adaptable and scalable. And my colleague Christine, she might have already dropped this, but she will drop a link in the chat to our full paper on each of those 6 elements that lead to a culture of mentorship, which includes examples of how each element drives impact at several of our partner institutions, like the examples you'll hear from our PSMs today, our partner success managers. All right, so I'm going to turn it now to start the conversation with our partner success managers, starting off with a quick rundown of those basics. How do those microsurveys work? Christine will also drop a link in the chat to our Partner Knowledge Center article. We sometimes refer to it as the PKC, so just keep that in mind, Partner Knowledge Center. And the article that she's dropping is a guide, a robust guide, really, with microsurvey basics, as well as a how-to video, a library, and we'll talk more about the library in that article at the end of our session today. All right, let's start with you, Alyssa. Welcome, thank you. Can you start us off by sharing more about what microsurveys are, such as what kinds of what types of microsurveys are available, and how do they work? Give us the rundown.
Yeah, absolutely. So microsurveys are, as the name would imply, a brief, small survey. We typically want to keep it that way, and it's kind of aimed to be a one-question survey, maybe one question with a follow-up. And that's part of the appeal. It doesn't take 10 minutes to complete. It doesn't direct you to a new web page to take. You don't have to read a novel before you begin the survey. We just want to capture a snapshot of their feelings in that moment through a single question or question and follow up there. So this is something, it's not meant to be a formal assessment or replace any of the larger, broader surveys that are so important to measuring data. It's more so just meant to be an opportunity to capture questions that maybe you don't have the chance to ask in other places or on your own timeline. You're not dictated by the start or end of a semester or school year. You can kind of intervene and kind of capture those feelings from your mentees or mentors or both at any time. And so there's a few different types of microsurveys that you can create. We have 3 different styles that you can create the questions in. You can do a scale, which is pictured on the left here, where you can ask a question and then have the students rank themselves somewhere from high to low. And then you can create a follow-up question with that in an open response if you wanted to maybe get some insight if people have a low response or a high response, and you can set what those parameters are. We have a single select, so a yes, no, or a, just choose one of these answers. And then this one also does have that follow-up open response question as well. If you do have anything that comes up or you want to capture, maybe if someone says, no, I have not received the support I need, you want more details on that. So you can capture that at the end of your survey. And then we do also have a multi-select. So if you wanted to provide a few options on whatever question you're asking, students can then select within all available what applies to them. And so there's a few different ways you can do that and structure your question, but it is helpful to understand that those are the 3 that are available. There's not a lot of conditional logic happening here. We can't then open that up to a bunch of different responses and continue on, because then we're charting into just regular survey territory and not just micro survey, quick, small, captured moments. So That's kind of how you would want to set up that structure. You can always contact your PSM to discuss it. We are so happy to kind of review what you're thinking or talk out ideas with you, because obviously you may have a lot of different places your mind goes when you want to do some of these surveys, and we can help you kind of parse it down and make sure it fits in the context of any of these structures that we have. Um, but that's kind of just very high level where we start. It lives in the participant's dashboard. As you can see, this is what their different dashboards look like as the students or mentors or whoever logs in. It's kind of like this banner that goes across the page. And then you can also dictate, how long do you want it to stay up there? Do you want that to run for a month? Do you want it to run for a week? Do you want it to stay up for the entire year of the program? The one caveat I will say, you can only have one microsurvey up at a time. So that's something just to consider with the timing. If you're wanting to do multiple throughout the year, obviously you'll need to kind of set the time frame between when you're wanting these different ones to run. But you can use these for a lot of different things. They can be check-ins on your students, how the program itself is going. You can do a poll if you're trying to get some feedback or understand where their minds are. It can also be things that are completely unrelated to the mentorship program itself. If you just want to see if your students are resonating with something that's happening on campus, or if they feel like they need more support elsewhere. But there's a lot of different ways you can use it, and it's really nice because it's customizable and personable to what you're looking for in your program.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Alyssa. I learned a lot there on microsurveys. Thank you. So just to confirm, so I heard you say that this is a great way to capture a snapshot of the student experience at that moment that they're feeling, whatever they're feeling, they're answering the question in that moment, and it's a one question survey that two of the types of surveys have the opportunity to provide additional feedback that they can share. Is that right?
Yep, exactly.
Fantastic. Thank you. And yeah, and then for partners who are looking to build this, uh, talk to your PSM. Is that right?
Yeah, you can send them directly to our support team as well. But I would recommend, if it's your first micro survey, maybe talking with your partner success manager. Again, just because a lot of my partners who've used these in the past have some big grand ideas. And sometimes I have to kind of help remind them of some of the limitations and make sure that
Mhm.
we can fit it in the context of that single question.
Awesome. Thank you. Fantastic. So, all right, let's dive into more about the microsurvey data. So, after a student takes this microsurvey and they maybe you have one student who's taken it, or again, like we said earlier, maybe you have 10,000 students who have taken it, and you want to see that data. You want to have a data informed and participant centered approach to driving a culture of mentorship at your institution. How do you get this data, Deanna? Can you walk us through how to download it?
Yes. So while Alyssa mentioned that you will work with Mentor Collective and your partner success manager to administer the microsurvey, you do have direct access to the responses from your students, and they're really, really easy to get. So when you log into your dashboard and you go to the exports tab that you can find on the left side of the dashboard, you might have to scroll, but at the bottom of the page, if you've administered a microsurvey, you will see the microsurvey data export. Right now, if you're going into your dashboard, that data export might not exist quite yet. But I promise once you actually administer a microsurvey, you will be able to find the responses from your students in that area. I also think this is a wonderful time to remind you all that you have access to a lot of student provided data through your program. And so in this export tab as well, you will see in the on the slide that Jen is sharing, there is a wide range of student provided data that you have access to export. So don't forget as well that that's there too. You can export all of the matching survey data that your students have submitted. You can export just general participant data for all of your program participants. So endless options there. So don't forget that exists as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Deanna. I love that reminder. There is so much here, right? There are so many insights on your student population here that would be really helpful in driving impact, which is Great. That leads me to my next question. Avis, I'd love for you to share how we can use microsurvey data to identify areas of improvement in our mentorship program. So thinking more strategically, how can we use the learnings that are coming in from these surveys to make our program stronger?
Absolutely. So the first example that I can think of is a partner that I help ensure the success of their program in New York. And so once we hit the end of the first semester, we implement a micro survey to help gauge the intentions of the participants for the next semester. And so we know that we assess our student satisfaction with the program and things like that at certain strategic points in the program cycle. But there is a good place at the end of the first semester going into the second semester to gather some information. And how we are using that is it's helping us craft the right recruitment strategy going into the spring semester. We want to make sure, especially at that time, that we are putting as much effort as possible in the smart areas. And so this particular partner has a large group that is graduating in December, which will most likely consist of a lot of the mentors that are active and, helping their mentees. And so what we are really trying to gauge is, what does mentor recruitment look like for the second semester? How are we thinking about rematching? Are there any manual matches that we need to make? And so I'm really looking forward to how that impacts our strategic planning for the second semester. But I think that it is a good example of how we are using microsurveys to help improve our program strategy moving forward.
I love that. That's so timely. I'm looking in the chat and I'm seeing some of the folks that are here, and it's a good reminder that your spring is coming. It might be December 11th, but spring is right around the corner, and we have to start planning for that right now. So having this data is a great way to impact recruitment. All right, so microsurveys can be helpful at various points in both the timeline of your students' experiences and also in the seasonality of your program life cycle, like Avis had just mentioned, right, with recruitment coming up. So, for example, maybe you want to, as you're welcoming incoming students back to campus, you might want to gauge what resources those students need, such as, I don't know, maybe parking passes or housing support, right? Later in their academic year, you might inquire if they're interested in internships or work opportunities. And as your mentorship initiative takes off, you also might want to organize an event to celebrate your mentors. A microsurvey can help you figure out all of these things. They can help figure out when, where mentors might engage in your events, making really good use of your time and money in hosting an event that's well attended. It also allows you to gather feedback or stories from participants as the mentorship program comes to a close. So that's another use towards the end of the program life cycle that some of our partners take advantage of, allowing, if you're thinking about a subsequent initiative, it allows you to make more of an impact based on the feedback that you received from that past year. So again, thinking more about feedback and thinking more about leveraging microsurveys to gather that kind of information. Avis, I'm going to come right back to you. I'm interested in the types of surveys that your partners have used for that purpose. If you could give us a little bit more on that.
Sure. So another partner in New York, but we are assessing, excuse me, what services participants have utilized in the first semester, and what services they would like to know more about and be connected with in the spring semester. And so I think that this is giving us a good gauge in terms of engagement and quality of engagement. In this particular program, what we did find was there was a slight decrease in priority flags and flags that were submitted from previous years. And so I think there are different ways that you can go about understanding that challenge. One way, optimistically, would be that the mentors are providing all of the resources and the students don't need any extra support from administrative staff. I think we all know that that probably isn't the case. And so understanding what services the participants are actually engaging with on campus. And of course, like I said, who they can be connected to in the spring is a way to understand the satisfaction and the value that the participants are getting from the program.
That's fantastic. So when this partner had these results come in, what did they do next? How did that lead to institution-wide impact?
Sure. So they were able to download the data and they split those lists up and they sent them directly to the departments on campus that the students identified they wanted support in. And I don't know exactly what the communication was, but I would imagine it was something like, hey, we've identified these students that are interested in these services. They've reached out to us. We would love for you to connect with them directly. And so I know in my history in higher ed, it was a lot about, and I don't mean to age myself, but it was a lot about having the students come to us and making sure they know where the offices are and our contact information. But I think another piece that is helpful in Mentor Collective is we give you the information through the students being self-reporting and saying what they need for us to be proactive and do the outreach to the students directly. So not waiting for them to necessarily say, hey, I need help, but we can do some things to do some active outreach to them at crucial times in their career.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I love that you called that out. We are hearing from folks really across the country, and it's all over the news too, that we're seeing, when students are in need, they're not necessarily going to those services, right? We need a way to be able to go to the student. And so this is for such a simple tool, right? A one question survey, it offers so much impact and opportunity in being able to bring the student what they need at the time they need it. Which is fantastic. That leads me into Alyssa, thinking more along the lines of a critical time in the student experience. You have a really interesting example of how this was used by a partner in Hawaii, and I'd love for you to talk through how Microsurveys helped the partner support students there. Yeah, thank you.
So last year, right as the school year was beginning, I don't know if everyone will remember, but in Maui, they were experiencing wildfires. And in Hawaii, a lot of students who attend that university are from the state of Hawaii as well. And so they knew that they may have students who were impacted, their families were impacted, or extended family or friends. And so obviously they wanted to do as much as they could to support their students and be there for them, especially as they're first arriving on campus. So we launched a micro survey just to make sure students were aware of all the resources and we could direct student to all of the resources that the university was already providing. They were being very proactive in making sure they had resources available for their students, but also just gave them the space to let them know if they needed anything else. They gave them contact information within the survey of people they could reach out to, and then also left that free response field where people could indicate what maybe would have been missing or what they could have used further support on if any of the resources that they had weren't enough. And so that was a really great opportunity just to make sure the students knew that they had that support and also collect any feedback or information if they felt that there were missing resources that they could then share with the university, or just have another person that can reach out and be a listening ear in a circumstance of a lot of stress, obviously. So that was a good use case of kind of a really tender moment and a critical time at students that can be very stressful when there's natural disasters going on, but they were able to then kind of leverage that as a way to continue offering support to students and find ways to connect more of them.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. What I love about this is that it cuts through the noise, right? So we know that students are not answering, checking their emails. We know that sometimes they're getting bombarded with text messages as well. And microsurvey is a different tool to kind of cut through all of that. So when they're in their dashboard, it pops up, it is there. They don't have to go somewhere else to get that communication. But when they are given, some sort of a question through the micro survey, and that data is then downloaded and better understood by program managers, giving the program managers the ability to reach out with resources. There's so many different channels that can happen. And Deanna, I'd love for you to talk more about how partnering with us can make microsurveys successful, considering specifically communications, right? Like how can nudging work or other custom communications? Like how do you take what you're given with the microsurvey data and then bring those resources to the student in need?
Oh my gosh, definitely. I think there are a lot of areas to consider when you're thinking about working with a microsurvey and then thinking about reviewing those results and actually making next steps. So I think first, one of the main components to think about is timing. This can be timing that is thought about with the academic calendar, or maybe you are reviewing student provided data from the matching survey and you recognize a lot of your students are working a job during the academic year. And so you want to find a way to ask them through a micro survey what kind of support they need, something like that. Or maybe an additional micro survey after you receive your assessment survey results. So a lot of opportunities when you're thinking of timing here. You can also proactively plan to use a micro survey. So maybe when you're working with your partner success manager in the spring to plan, crazy to think about, but for the 2025-26 academic year, you can plan your micro surveys in the timeline. Obviously, maybe that's not set in stone and that's possible to change, but at least having an idea of when you might want to utilize them. I have had a partner express interest in using microsurveys as a way to do an additional check-in just between the mid and end program assessments, just because there is a considerable gap between when we launch those assessment surveys. So that's just one example of utilizing within the academic calendar and during program planning of, okay, we're going to plan to use a microsurvey at this time. Once you are ready to launch your microsurvey and you want to receive responses, there are many ways to email or text your participants. You can do that yourself. I think it always works best if the partner yourself sends out communication, and then Mentor Collective can really complement that, whether that be an additional email or a text message, but kind of working together to get the message out there. And, you know, this obviously depends on the program, but incentivizing also never hurts. So if this is data in the microsurvey that is really important for you to have and you want to collect it from a wide range of students, maybe doing a raffle and incentivizing that way might help. Or sorry, another idea I just had. If you're having like a spring event that is around when you're launching this micro survey, at the event saying, hey, show me you filled out that survey and we'll give you a cookie, something like that. So many different ways to incentivize there. But once you actually have those results, right? I think microsurveys provide a really quick way to hear directly from your students, and that can allow for effective and proactive action on your part. I also think when we're thinking back to that culture of mentorship, it allows for data-driven support, right? So this is all really, really important data we're getting from the microsurvey. And so when you're getting those results, I think you can intervene both individually and in aggregate. If you're seeing trends and responses, work smarter, not harder. Don't feel like you need to reach out individually to students. Have Mentor Collective send out a resource that's for your financial aid office if students are mentioning concerns with financial aid or something like that. And then that leads me to the last thing I wanted to mention, which was when you have these results and you're thinking of how to support your students, don't forget that in the participant dashboard, there is so many wonderful resources for your students that Mentor Collective is providing that can range from conversation guides on how to have an effective conversation in your mentorship, but then also one of my favorites is the interview guide that helps walk your mentee through how to prepare for an interview and have an effective job interview. So there is such a wide range of resources. You also have access to look at these through your partner dashboard in the resources tab. So highly recommend you do that to see what's available. But then also don't forget that Mentor Collective can create custom resources based on your campus's resources as well. So one that I've recommended to partners is we've noticed in assessment survey and microsurvey results that students are hesitant to schedule academic advising appointments. So a custom resource I've recommended to partners is to put together a step-by-step guide on how to schedule an academic advising appointment and how to prepare for that appointment. So that's just one example of a custom resource. Custom resource could also include any sort of health and wellness specific resources on your campus, financial aid, really any information that you can think of that is specific to your campus that you want your students to have access to. We can add that directly on their participant dashboard. And like I said, you can use these microsurvey results to inform what is important to your students and what will be the most impactful. That was a lot. I hope it was helpful.
No, it was wonderful. Thank you so much, Deanna. Yeah, I absolutely love that, elevating the right resources to participants based on their individual needs, given the timing of their program or their academic calendar. So fantastic, and thank you. All right, let's talk more about ways microsurveys can provide meaningful impact. So I'd like to ask all three of you, in what ways have microsurveys helped partners better understand the needs and experiences of your students? Are there any specific stories that maybe you'd like to share about how the insights from microsurveys have been used to provide this kind of support? And Alyssa, I'd love to start with you.
Yes, and I have to admit the example I'm using is of one of my partners who's on the call today. So I will give a shout out to IU Online's Kayla Scrogans. She is a microsurvey mastermind. She started getting really into these earlier in last year's program and is still working on them this year. So I love seeing all the different questions she can come up with, and her team too helps kind of brainstorm some different ways to check in with their students. But one of the first ones we ever launched with IU Online's program is just checking in how classes and other obligations were going for their semester. And then we kind of gave them some options of things are going well, feeling supported, struggling, but they feel like they have the resources, or if they could use some additional help in whatever given area. And then the follow-up question there lets them choose what the, different areas are that they feel like they're able to offer support in. And then those students are able to provide that response. Kayla and her team can access the data, work with the student success coaches, and make sure that they have the ability to reach out to those students and make sure that they have the resources or support they need around whether that's, academic something, time management, emotional well-being, or whatever they feel like they need that support with. And so that's been a really great survey that we've done a couple of times now. We did it last semester and this semester, and I imagine we'll continue doing it in future iterations, but it's just a really good way to kind of check in with the students. The students are telling you like, hey, I feel like I could use some help here. That's someone you can reach out to and confidently connect with, and just have some really quick impact by answering whatever questions or providing whatever support they feel like they can need.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. And Rose, I see a great question in the chat. Is there a template for microsurveys that I can create a draft to send to my partner representative? And yes, we actually have a library of them, and I'll ask Christine to maybe drop that article in the chat, and we'll talk more about that library in just a sec as well. Let's turn it over to Avis. Can you share one of your stories? So a space that this has really seen some driven impact in some way. I'd love to hear your story.
Sure. So thinking of, I have a few partners in Georgia that recently went through Hurricane Helene in September, I believe, of this year. We used that as an opportunity to send out a micro survey to ask what the impact had been to participants and if they needed any support. One campus in particular, their phone line on campus was down for a few days. And so it directly impacted some calling campaigns that they had scheduled to assess support. And so we used the micro surveys as an opportunity to do that. And we found a way to do it in a way that helped to encourage engagement. And so we targeted some support resources to the mentors to reach out to their mentees to pass along. And so on top of adding resources to the dashboard that specifically gave like state support and how you can contact FEMA and all of those things, we did send those links directly to the mentors, encouraging them to reach out to their mentees to take the survey and to help gauge the understanding of how they needed support. And so, of course, it impacted how the participants felt supported by the school overall. To know that the campus was concerned about, what do your living arrangements look like? Do you need help moving things out? Do you need somebody to come and set up some fans to dry things out? If you've ever been through a hurricane, which I have, things like that are priceless. And so getting that directly from the campus, I think, helped. And also, in a selfish way, it boosted engagement as well in the numbers. And so that's just one of the more heartfelt examples of how we've used micro surveys to help support the success of a program.
Great, thank you. Deanna, let's turn to you now. Wrap us up here. Give us a story.
Yeah, I want to kind of take the angle of what can we do to alleviate your time as a program manager for a mentorship program? How can we utilize these micro surveys to make sure you're using the little time you have in an impactful way? So one of the partners that I work with, Lehigh University, has used the micro survey to ask their participants their interest in in-person programming. So I work with a lot of partners who maybe make the brave assumption that their students are wanting some sort of in-person event, some way to get together in person. And while that might be the case with some students, I think it really does depend on the student population. Using a micro survey to directly ask your students, hey, would you be interested in attending an in-person event if we put one on? You could even ask a follow-up of, okay, what kind of event would you want to see then? I've had another partner use microsurveys in that way. Washington State University used them to, they were already planning on having that in-person programming, but wanted to make sure that would be an event that students would be interested in attending to have the best turnout possible. So like I was saying, this is a way to, before you put in some hard work to plan an event, you can hear from your students directly on what would interest them most to get the most attendance and meet them where they want as well.
Great. Yeah, and I've heard from all three of you, Deanna, Alyssa, Avis, beyond just the finding value in adding or taking away some of the challenges of capacity planning, also making sure that resources are elevated to participants who are in need. So those, I heard all of those things. And I also heard that maybe the hidden value here is also kind of driving the participants' feeling of sense of belonging, right? If they are feeling heard and seen by their institution and they're getting the resources that they need and they're being invited to the events that they want to go to, the types of events that they are interested in, and also, again, getting those resources that they really could benefit from at the institution, whether it's something as extreme as a FEMA resource or something maybe more common like an academic advising resource that you had said, Alyssa. So those kinds of things, getting that elevated is really, I think the hidden value there is really driving sense of belonging, making sure that students feel seen and heard on campus. All right, that takes me to our library. So we have before I close, I'd love to share this fantastic resource. It's a brand new library that we have here at Mentor Collective. It's in our Partner Knowledge Center, or that PKC. It is a library of example microsurveys, some of the ones that you heard today from our partner success managers, but also some others that we have seen really across the country and over the last few years being used successfully by your partners. There are dozens of examples you can grab and use for your own mentorship initiatives, and you can take a look there. You can get some inspiration, and you can always bring this to a conversation with your partner success manager to have an informed conversation about what kinds of surveys would work for your program. And thank you, Christine, for dropping that link in the chat. I'll also make sure to include it in follow-up messaging, and your partner success managers know about this resource, right? So I'll make sure that they are able to elevate this to you in your regular check-ins with them. It's really a fantastic place to start if you're looking to create your first ones. All right, thank you so much to our partner success managers for sharing their insight and their stories. Deanna, Alyssa, Avis, thank you. And partners, thank you for your time here today and for sharing your stories with us, right? It's, we are able together as a team drive impact for students. And whether it's microsurveys or whatever the feature is, we are a team and we are so appreciative of you being a part of that. Our next education events that we have coming up, we are already planning for January. So our January webinar will be Spring into Mentorship. It's our top tips for success for your spring initiatives. You can sign up there. Christina's dropped the link into the chat. We also have an ongoing series. It's a data consultation opportunity. It's a very informal, small group. It's just yours truly, and then one of our data experts here at Mentor Collective. You're free to pop in during that time and talk about anything from how to download this microsurvey data, how to make a pivot table, how to add some color, some flair to your graphs that you might be building, or even something more strategic. So how do you use this information across your campus to spread a culture of mentorship? So we'd love for you to join us there if you are interested. And as always, please keep a pulse on that inbox for future invitations, that monthly digest that will be coming out with timely resources, some video content, the MC Minute, and then again, the follow-up from this webinar. All right, before all of you head out, I would love your feedback in our own little micro survey, I guess, if you will. I have a poll on just collecting your feedback on how you enjoyed today. I'd love for you to take that. It should pop up there on your screen. If you could give me a second of your time, that would be great. And while you're taking that poll, if anyone has any questions that they want to come off mute or off camera and speak either to myself or to our partner success managers directly, you're welcome to do so. All right. Thank you so much. No questions. That's good. We answered all of it. But if you do have a question, if there's something that you're kind of rolling around in your head, or you're thinking through what might be a great example of a survey to make, or ways to make this create impact in your program, please don't hesitate to either contact your partner success manager, or of course you can always reply to this event invitation in your email and it will go to me. So that is one way to reach out to us, or our partner support email is also always available to answer your questions, especially related to data and any of these features. They are able to help you there as well. And lastly, I can't end without another plug to our fantastic partner knowledge center, where you can do a quick search and find many of the answers to the questions you have as well. Alrighty, I'm going to end there. Thank you so much again. And I hope all of you have a fabulous holiday season. Thank you again, and I'll connect with all of you soon.